So don't you have to sometimes, well, not sometimes, but all the time, admire the courage of Jesus? And can you put yourself for a moment, if you are one of the scribes or the Pharisees, and you are all about, always doing the right thing and being seen doing the right thing. And here this man came along and he said he was claiming to be the Son of God, the Messiah. And here he is, sorting with all kinds of, people that we wouldn't be seen dead with, you or I. And I mean you or I. And yet Jesus was so happy in the company of sinners and tax collectors. I mean, tax collectors were absolutely, in the time of Jesus, they were absolutely despised, because they were Jews who had sold out to the Romans and were taking tax of their own people and giving it to the Romans. And not only taking tax, but also taking money for themselves. So most tax collectors were quite rich and quite wealthy. Maybe some of you can identify with being that way, quite rich and quite wealthy. And so they were really, people who are into deception and I suppose in many ways fraud. And yet here was Jesus, and when Levi, in other Gospels he's called Matthew, when he invited Jesus to his house and gave a big dinner and invited all his friends, so presumably all his fellow tax collectors, Jesus was there in the middle of them, totally comfortable. So what is the gospel saying to us this morning? Or where are we in the gospel this morning? What is the gospel saying to me this morning? Well, I'll tell you where I am in the gospel this morning, hopefully where I would like to be, and hopefully I am, is to admit that I need continual forgiveness from the Lord. Because Jesus came, and did not come to save the perfect, but ordinary people, sinners like myself, and I can't say all of you are sinners. But talking about that, I'm very aware that at the present time, well, put it this way, the vast majority of people today who would regard themselves as practicing Catholics and good people, you never seem to need a confession today. So I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you, who are listening to me this morning, when was the last time that you came to confession on a one-to-one? You might say, well, I've come to the services that we had before Easter and before Christmas, but I think a one-to-one confession is also good to have in our lives. And one of the things I find about since the pandemic began, I today hear a lot more confessions than ever I did before the pandemic began. As for example, this morning, I'll have a number of people after Mass later on this morning coming for confession. So what's the difference between them and you? What do you think is the difference between those people who go to the trouble of picking up the phone, saying, can I make an arrangement for confession? And what's the difference between those people and you? And only you can answer that. But most people today seem to be of the impression they don't need confession. So again, what's the difference between the people who will turn up this morning and who ask for confession on a one-to-one basis and you? Do I personally need to go to confession? Yes, I do. And do I? Yes, I do. So, what's the difference between you and I?